So on my way here, I was behind a van, and I looked up, and there was a saying on the back of the van. It said, "That thing that you want is here." It was an Amazon van.
Oh, wow.
But whoever came up with that knew something. What they knew is everybody wants something, and Amazon can get it to you faster. So you don't have to wait for what you want. You can get it faster.
And you'll never be satisfied. You'll order something every day, every week, right?
That's right. That's because the life you're living is a wanton life. The life you're living is a life of dissatisfaction. Isn't it interesting? It's ironic. It's a paradox, right? On the one hand, if you hear that from the view of the personality, it's talking about the fact that you're never satisfied. If you hear that from the view of the awareness, it's pointing to the fact that you're always satisfied. Exact same opposite. So that's what's available. You can go from dissatisfaction to satisfaction, and nothing has to change. You can go from dissatisfaction to satisfaction, and nothing has to change. That's why we're sitting here paying attention to that which is already satisfied. When we sit here in stillness and silence, we're paying attention to that which is already satisfied, that which is not changing, that which is not getting easy or hard, that which is not going up or down, that which is not good or bad. It's out of that. It's off of that. It's the freedom from that. I saw a video of a guy who was 103 years old. And in the video, he was talking about his life, and he had a very challenging life and a very interesting life. He was a bomber pilot in World War II, and he flew 49 missions, flying bombers. Came from a very poor family, during the Depression. So he started out with nothing. His life was about daily getting enough to eat. Ended up being a bomber pilot, flying bomber missions in World War II. And so he volunteered for the 50th flight, because after 50 flights, you can retire. You can leave the service and you don't have to be in the war anymore. Well, on the 50th flight, the plane got shot down. So he had to parachute into the woods, and him and two other guys that were on the plane found each other when they landed, and they were searching for food, and they were starving. They couldn't find anything to eat. And so they ran into a guy, a farmer, and they asked him if he could help them find food. So he said, "Follow me." And he took them to the German concentration camp and turned them in. So then he spent years it wasn't concentration, it was a prisoner of war camp. But it was run by the Nazis, so it wasn't pleasant. So he spent some time there, and then the Russians liberated that camp, and he got free from there, and his life went on. So here he is now at 103 years old, and they asked him, the person that was talking to him asked him, "How would you describe the process of your life?" And he said, "Well, in the beginning I was getting used to it, and then I started enjoying it, and now I'm celebrating it." And I thought that was very interesting, because when you look at getting used to life, that's where a lot of human beings spend their entire life, getting used to life, trying to deal with the unpredictability of it, trying to deal with the suffering, trying to deal with the pain of it. So that part of life, you could call that dealing with circumstances, right? Getting used to life, dealing with circumstances, that's getting used to life. And then the second part, enjoying it, is being with the circumstances without suffering. That's enjoying it, being with the circumstances without suffering. And then the final part, celebrating it, is freedom from the circumstances. Complete freedom from the circumstances. 103 years old. So the person that was interviewing him said, well, you're 103 now. What are you shooting for? And he said, tomorrow. But this guy was awake. It was very clear. It was very evident to me that he was awake. You know, when he was being interviewed, they showed close-ups of his face, you know, and he looked like he was about to cry the whole time. He looked like he was about to cry the whole time. That's what it is to be fully alive. It's a moving experience to be fully alive. It's a moving experience. You're about to cry all the time, you know. Anything can bring tears to your eyes. Anything. Because you're experiencing life now. You're not experiencing you, the character in the drama that you're in. That's the ordinary way that people experience life. Me, the character, and the drama that I'm in is the ordinary way that people experience life. But if you get to the second stage where you can enjoy it, now you're not involved with the circumstances completely anymore. The quality of your life is not a function of what's happening in the circumstances anymore. You're not struggling with the circumstances, you know, trying to make more money or, you know, trying to stay in control or trying to stay alive in some situations or trying to maintain some degree of satisfaction, well-being, and happiness against the odds. Against the odds, right? All you have to do is look at the news and you're bummed out. So the second stage is when you get to the point, and meditation can help this process, right? The second stage is when you get to the point, instead of paying attention to the details of the circumstances and paying attention to what your reaction to that is in terms of whether it's the way it should be, whether I like it, whether I want it to be that way. Instead of being involved with it like that all the time, trying to survive as a personality, you know, trying to control other people's behavior so they don't upset you, trying to, you know, control your own mind so it doesn't upset you, you know, through all kinds of ways and means. So the second part in life is that when you come to an understanding that there is a stillness, there's a silent stillness that's stable, that's always available. And when you begin to identify yourself as that silent stillness that's stable and always available, then instead of seeing the circumstances and being the character in the drama, now you see life. Now what you see is life happening. That's the kind of the second stage that he talked about. Now you can start to enjoy it because you're no longer attached to what's happening. The circumstances are no longer determining the experience you're having, because now you understand that the circumstances are always going to be changing. The circumstances are always going to be changing, and sometimes it's going to be good, and sometimes it's going to be bad, and sometimes it's going to be real bad, and sometimes it's going to be real good. And that's life. When you're involved with it, you have an investment in it. You know, you want it to be good all the time. When it's bad, you don't like it, you know, so you're trying to work to keep it stable somehow. But then if you wake up to your true nature, you realize that, wait a minute, instead of trying to keep working with the circumstances to try and get them to be the way I want, it's pretty evident to me that that's not going to work. That's not going to happen. The circumstances are just being affected by so many different things. So maybe instead of being involved with it that way, maybe because now I recognize that I'm the awareness instead of the character, I'm the awareness instead of the physical body, so maybe instead of being involved with it that way, I can take a step back behind the personality and look from there, right? And then I can see this is life. This is life. That's all. This is just life. And this is the way life is. This is the way life goes. And it's not so terrible anymore because now you're appreciating it. You're appreciating it as an experience called life. You're appreciating it as an experience called life, and you recognize that, you know, you've kind of dropped into this. You've kind of ended up here somehow. And this thing is going on, life is going on, and part of the way life is going on is not just out there, it's in here too. Part of the way life is going is not just out there, it's in here too. What do I mean? It's happening in here too, because my thoughts are up and down just like the circumstances are up and down. My emotions are up and down just like the circumstances are up and down. So the life is an inner life and an outer life, but it's still a life. It can't be controlled, and it's unpredictable. And this idea that we have, this belief that we have, that somehow we are an agent that's able to interact with life somehow and make it bend to our will, make it cooperate with what we want. You know, when you start to really pay attention and you start to really recognize the reality of the situation, you begin to see that the truth is, you showed up here, and after you showed up here, the body that you showed up with was conditioned to have beliefs, right? One of the beliefs it was conditioned to have is that there's something inside this body called me. One of the conditions that got put into the system is there's something in my body called me, and it's looking out through these eyes. And so now I'm experiencing myself as this entity, that's separate from everything else that's happening. And I have this belief that I have agency. I have this belief that I have free will. But if I really pay attention and I really understand what the teachings tell me, it's telling me that even the thoughts that occur in my mind that I think I'm thinking, and even the emotions that play in my body that I think are reacting to the circumstances, right? Even that was all destiny. It was all destiny because given the conditioning that occurred to this body-mind organism, it generates these particular thoughts. So in my life, as I'm living in this dream that I think I have agency and I think I'm this body and I think there's something in here called me, right? I think this thing in here called me has free will and can interact with the world and make things happen. But if I really start to pay close attention, what's really going on here are thoughts are occurring, they're coming from my conditioning, and there are emotions that are happening, right? And as I come to understand that I am the awareness of those emotions and those thoughts, I'm not the thinker of those thoughts, I'm not the feeler of those emotions, I start to realize this is all playing by itself. This is all playing by itself. The thoughts and the emotions are occurring. I think that's me. I believe I'm in this body, and I behave in a certain way, right? And I think that I have free will, right? But if you really pay attention, if you really allow yourself to witness the reality as it is, you realize that the only reality that exists here is the possibility for you to know the truth about who you are so that you can witness this thing called life, which has an outer reality and an inner reality, and you can come to understand that there's nothing you can do about it. Your conditioning will play itself out. There is a destiny involved in it. The idea that you have free will is an illusion. The idea that you can interact with life and make things go your way is an illusion. And it's a good thing to discover this because then you stop trying to do the impossible. It's a good thing to discover this, so then you can stop trying to do the impossible and you can start to relax and allow yourself to be a witness to your life, to be a witness to life. And this is what is the second phase of life when you wake up and you can start to enjoy it. You can start to enjoy it. You realize that you didn't write this script. You know, you can't make this movie go the way you want it to go. It's going to play the way it plays. The only real possibility is for you to allow yourself to realize that you're the witness of it. That's all. You're just a witness of it. It's interesting because to the extent that you realize you're the witness of it, it means that you recognize that the conditioning is what's causing your thoughts and your emotions, right? But when you realize you're the witness of it, an interesting thing happens, and that is that the conditioning is rearranged in a very fundamental way, right? The conditioning is rearranged in a very fundamental way. The conditioning is rearranged in such a way where you no longer consider yourself to be the physical body, and you no longer consider yourself to be the one who is separate from the world. You no longer consider yourself to be the one who is dramatically trying to pull this off, this life off. And because you no longer consider yourself to be that anymore, the most fundamental aspect of your conditioning shifts. The most fundamental aspect of your conditioning shifts. Because the most fundamental aspect of your conditioning is the belief that you're your body, and it's the belief that you're a personality. That's the most fundamental aspect. So when you begin to practice sitting in silence, and you begin to practice paying attention, and you come out of that belief, you come out of that dream, right? Then the most fundamental aspect of your conditioning shifts. Therefore, your conditioning shifts, and when your conditioning shifts, now the way you relate to the thinking that continues to happen changes, right? Because now you're not falling into the trap anymore, believing that you're thinking the thoughts. You're just looking at the thoughts happen. And your perception of things is a lot more realistic because you're looking from a true place now. You're not looking from a conditioned reality. You're looking from a real place. You're looking from a real place, and because you're looking from a real place, you can see what's really happening. Because you can see what's really happening and your conditioning has changed, you no longer consider yourself to be a physical body and a personality. Oh yeah, you have to practice it. It's not going to change all at once for most of us. But by that changing, everything is different. And you can begin to relax and enjoy life because now you see life as life is. You see life as life is. It's not just bad luck. It's not just good luck. It's life. It's what's happening called life. And there's a limited amount of time that you have to visit this situation. You know, one of the things that the conditioning does is try to reassure us that everything is going to be okay. You know, that just don't think about death, everything is going to be okay. It tries to reassure us. Just be involved in the immediate situations you're in. Don't think about the future. You know, don't think about the future. Be involved in the immediate situation that you're in. Do your best to be in control. But this is a dream. And one of the things about it that's very important to understand is this visit that you're involved with, right? This visit that you're on is a very limited visit. You know, most of you guys are, you know, there's no young kids here, right? So you know what I mean when I say life is short, don't you? Yeah. It was like, you know, when you get to the last part of your life, you look back and realize it seemed like yesterday. Life is so short, right? Yeah. So this is a visit. And the reality of it is the sooner you can get to the position, the sooner you can get to the place where you're witnessing life instead of being the person struggling with and coping with the circumstances, the sooner you can witness life, the sooner you can be what you really are, witnessing life, you can start to enjoy this before it's over. Because it's going to be over very soon. Even if you live to be 100, it's going to be over very soon. 100 years is nothing. It's nothing. And not only that, but if you get connected to reality, you realize that you have to assume anything is a mistake. To assume anything is a mistake. To assume tomorrow is a mistake. Everybody thinks about their life in terms of a certain number. If I ask you, you know, how long do you expect to live? You know, how long do you expect to live? The only honest answer to that is I have no idea. Right? But we don't like to make contact with that reality, so we make up a number, you know. Oh, today people live to be 100, so I figure I got some time, right? That's very, very ignorant to live your life that way. You can't afford to miss this. You can't afford to miss any day of this life. You can't afford to miss any day of this life. It's too precious. It's too, the possibility of being awake and experiencing life as life actually is such a blessing and such a gift that the sooner you can get to the place where you're experiencing life as life really is and stop expecting it to be the way you want it to be, the sooner you can start to enjoy yourself. The sooner you can start to experience what this 103-year-old man was talking about when he said, at this point, at 103 years, I'm celebrating now. I'm not just enjoying, I'm celebrating this. And I'm not stupid enough to think that I'll be here tomorrow. If I make it until tomorrow, that will be a blessing. But do the rest of us live our life that way? When you go to bed at night, do Do you live your life in such a way when you go to bed at night, you really consider the possibility that you may not wake up? Do you really consider the possibility that you may not wake up? You should consider the possibility that you may not wake up. It might get you grounded in reality, that life is too precious to be acting as if you got so much of it to spend. So sitting in silence is a way to connect with the truth. It's a way to realize that the situation as it is, that it's very temporary. It's very temporary. And to have realistic expectations about it. The only realistic expectation to have about life is life will be the way life is. That's a realistic expectation. It will be the way life is. And if you've been around for a while, you know the way life is. It's unpredictable. It goes up, it goes down. It's good, it's bad. And until you wake up and realize your true nature, you go up and you go down, and you're in good shape and bad shape, and you're happy and you're sad and you're miserable and you're angry and you're depressed and you're anxious. So life doesn't go up and down, you go up and down, and you're trying to stop it from happening, trying to stop this up and down stuff from happening, this off and on stuff from happening, trying to stop this process that you have no control over, that no matter what's happening, right, you have this mechanism running all the time called the mind, and no matter what's happening, it's judging and evaluating it. This is good, this is bad. I like this, I don't like this. I want this, I don't want this. And when you identify with that and you relate to that as you, right, then you're constantly in conflict. Anytime something's happening that doesn't feel good, you reject it. You want it to change, you want to control it, you want to stop it. That's why meditation is so challenging for a lot of people, because to just sit still and be silent, if you just sit still and be silent, but you still keep identifying yourself with the thinking activity, then you're not sitting still being silent, you're sitting there being crazy. You're sitting there having the thoughts, constantly running. When you're active in the world, it doesn't torture you as much. Not only does it not torture you as much, but you think you use it. You think you use it to live your life, right? Based on what you think and how you feel, it's the way you act. But when you sit still and you sit in silence, and there's nothing to do, when you sit still and you're sitting in silence and there's nothing to do, and it's running just like you're still involved in activity, then it's like, oh, why won't it stop? I can't meditate. One of the things about sitting still in silence, if you're doing it correctly, is that the experience you have is very soft. It's very soft. Adi Shanti was talking about this in the video that I sent out on the email list, and he said that a lot of people never practice what meditation actually is. A lot of people never practice what meditation actually is. They're trying, right? The people, and you've seen it here in the class, and the people who go to practice and they look like they're going to pass a cinder block any minute. That's called relaxing. No, the people that are sitting there trying to meditate, and they're not having much of a good time. So a lot of people will never practice meditation the way it's meant to be done, because if you practice it the way it's meant to be done, it's very soft. It's very soft. And when Adi Shanti was talking about that, he said there are some people that they'll go in their room and they're sitting and they're practicing meditation, and somebody opens the door and they jump and they say, "Oh, please, I'm trying to meditate." How soft is that practice? So you discover the softness of the stillness and the silence. If you're really experiencing the stillness and the silence, it's soft. If something happens, it's fine. You allow it to happen. I used to experience this when I was meditating and my dog would come, and he would put his paw on my knee, pet me, notice me. And I would just gently open my eyes and look at him. I didn't really even come out of this sitting in stillness. Right? Just gently open my eyes and look at him, and he kept going, right? So I leaned down and picked him up and put him up on my lap, and he went to sleep. And I just continued to sit in stillness and silence. This is the softness of it, right? This is the softness. So when we're practicing here in class, right, and there's a noise outside of the room, right, or there's music playing in the room next door, right? If you're sitting in stillness and silence and you're sitting in softness, the awareness that you are is very flexible, very pliable, very empty. It allows everything to be just as it is. And if you're sitting in stillness and silence experiencing that, then what's the problem? What's the problem? You welcome everything that's happening. You experience love. You experience being in love with life. You experience being in love with everything that's happening. Nothing can disturb you because you've come to peace. You've recognized what peace is. You know, peace is the ability to be with any circumstance. That's what it is. It's the ability to be with any circumstance. And when you're experiencing yourself as the silence and the stillness, that silence and stillness is available in any circumstance. And it's a good connection to make, because there are going to be things in life that happen eventually that without that connection, it's not going to be very nice. It's not going to be very nice. You know, when the circumstances get intense, you start to suffer, right? When the circumstances get intense, you start to experience miserable. And you know, the personality is very rigid. The personality is very impatient. The personality is very intolerant. The personality wants to get out of trouble whenever something is happening that it doesn't want to happen. And of course, there are a lot of things in life that you can't get out of. So the personality finds itself stuck, cornered. You can't get out of getting old. You can't get out of your body aging. You can't get out of physical pain. You can't get out of the possibility of disease. You can't get out of the possibility of an accident happening. You can't escape from life. You can't get out of it. But you don't have to get out of it if you wake up and realize that your true nature is this silent, still, flexible, patient, unconditioned love. And as you begin to experience life instead of circumstances, when you begin to experience life this way, then no matter what the circumstances are, you're enjoying the experience because you're experiencing life, not the circumstances. But the intention is to use the opportunity, just like formal meditation, the intention is to use the opportunity to sit quietly in stillness, without practicing doing that in the middle of the traffic, without practicing doing that in the middle of your life, so that you can get good enough at it, you can get clear enough at it, you can go to that experience, right? And when you can go to that experience, then you can get back into the game and get back into the middle of life, you know, and enjoy yourself. Have a good time.